We have had some serious shakeups since I last talked about the races most desperate for a rework, so there's no better time than now, the content drought of 2026, to talk about the races that need it the most. Kicking off the list, we have one of the 3 factions from Shadows of Change, and I don't think you'll be too surprised to see more. Kislev are by far the best on this list and the race that needs a rework the least, hence their spot in 10th. However, it turns out that Warhammer 3 races are mostly in a good spot, so someone had to bring up the rear. With that said, Kislev still have some jank that could be smoothed out, and that mainly comes down to the individual factions and their mechanics. The political race has been improved, but aside from that, Katerin and Kastaltin don't really have much to differentiate them. Boris has his own little side quest to the Chaos Wastes, but doesn't really get much else aside from some extra devotion. And whilst Mama Stange is certainly powerful, her mechanics will never not feel like a grind to me. I don't think Kislev need much, but just a little pass to add some finishing touches to what is literally the poster race for the entire game. This should be the Empire of Warhammer 3, but they've never really felt that way, and unless they get another update, I don't think they ever will. Next up, Grand Cathay. Wow, another race from Shadows of Change. Who saw that one coming? Now, to be fair, Cathay aren't that bad, and compared to some of the races later in this list, they are perfectly functional. However, I still feel that they're a pretty nothing burger faction when it comes to mechanics. The Compass is fine, I guess, the Bastion is literally nothing, and Caravans are borderline useless depending on your luck. Their only mechanic I would consider decent is the Settlement Harmony, since that at least provides some interactivity, but beyond that, everything else feels boring. I will say that I do quite like the Matters of State from Yuan Bo, but the other two just have nothing going on. As much as I would like their base mechanics to get some attention, I really don't know what you could do to make them better, so at this point, I think I'd settle for some unique mechanics for Meow and Zhao. They're not terrible, and the campaigns are perfectly playable, but I just feel like they could use some extra spice. And in 8th place, what do you know, the 3rd race from Shadows of Change. I promise I didn't plan to put them all together, but it really is where they ended up falling. Tzeentch are probably the race that got the least changes to their existing campaign with the DLC. I've honestly never vibed with the campaign all that much, so that may be skewing things, but I really feel like they need something. Maybe it's the fact that we never got our free lord, so they just feel left behind by sheer numbers, but something about the Kairos campaign never clicks for me. Changeling is okay if a little broken, but the Fate Weaver feels more like the annoyance imparter. I can't really put my finger on it, but I want him to feel more like an actual Weaver of Fate that manipulates the world to his favour, and the current mechanics just make him feel like a little scamp. Like, he can swap settlement owners and stuff, but this dude should surely be capable of so much more than that. I just feel like I look at the 3 other monogod races and their legendary lords, and by comparison, Kairos just seems mid. And for real, they do need a Freelcy Lord, it's really not fair. It was never in doubt that the Undead were going to feature on this list, and spoilers, we are going to see them again. The Tomb Kings are one of the oldest DLC factions in the game not to have had an update, only being beaten by Bretonnia, who were actually Freelcy, but I digress. Since their launch, they have had very limited updates and have slowly fallen behind as the years wore on. Their mechanics were never bad, and they still have an excellent unique playstyle, but they could really use an update to bring them, well, up to date. Everything they have has since been given to other factions, resulting in them having nothing to really set them apart. All they really have left is their lack of an economy and capacity system, and both of these could do with some love to spruce things up. Honestly, with the Tomb Kings, it's not that they're all that bad, it's just that they are what they are, a little dusty from times long past. They just need a little necromancy to bring them back to life, and hopefully that will come with the Nagash DLC later this year, although we haven't heard anything yet, so getting a little bit nervous on that one, guys. Speaking of undead, the Vampire Coast, which are probably the undead race I'm the most conflicted on. On the one hand, I love the idea of undead pirates hunting for treasure and roaming the seas in search of plunder. But on the other hand, they're a race with all of these mechanics, and like one of them is actually useful. The infamy system is a total nothing burger. Their treasure hunts are actually worthless, pirate coves are fine when they work but nothing crazy, but what is crazy is that you can get all of these videos ad-free for just $1 a month by becoming a member at the join button below, which you should totally do, by the way. Shipbuilding is their only truly powerful mechanic, but even that is just a reskinned horde. In my opinion, they should be a horde faction that creates pirate coves as their limited settlements, but that's just me. This video isn't about how I would rework these factions, it's simply about pointing out who needs one in the first place. I love everything about the Vampire Coast, apart from playing them. Their theming and legendary lords are a ton of fun, apart from Aranessa, your trash girl. I just think they could really do with a full suite of new, or at the very least, reworked mechanics to be as fun as they look. They still have the best trailer song though. The final undead faction, and of course my favourites need the love most of all. To be fair, it's not just because I like them the most and want them to get the most attention, it's also because at their core, they're a pretty terrible race. Raising the Dead rocks, and always will be, that's just fine. However, bloodlines are a pretty nothing burger, even with the powerful lords. Corruption is like the first permutation of corruption in the series, so it doesn't do all that much interesting, and that is really all they have. I think it's such wasted potential because these are some of the most powerful necromancers in the world, but they can't do anything cool with it, like summoning armies in corrupted enemy lands, or resurrecting fallen enemies to do their bidding. I may not know all that much about the lore, but I have to believe they are doing something cooler than just creating endless hordes of skeletons and making out with their cousins. I really do believe that they have the most potential of any race in the game, and no, that's not just because I want them to be the best. Okay, it might be, but I still know they could be so much better than this. I think the fact that I've made not one, but 2 videos on 2 separate Bretonnia reworks tells you everything you need to know about how much help they need. They really are the unwanted stepchild of Warhammer 1 and 2, as they kinda slipped in below the radar just before the marriage, and have been ignored ever since. I mildly exaggerate, they've had some minor updates since, but even so, are one of the most clunky races in the game, and one of my personal least favourite races to play. Vows are ass, Chivalry is ass, Fey-Enchantress is feet, and overall, I just feel like they need something. You can tell they were free because you just really don't get much to do. I feel like it's almost hard to talk about why they need a rework so bad, because there's just nothing there. I just point to the nothing where there should be something, and make up some bullshit to say. Bretonnia have a lot of potential, as we found out in 3 separate mod videos and 1 podcast, but to get there, they need a huge update, and honestly, I'm not sure if it's ever coming. Taking 3rd place, we have the Dark Elves. In my recent race ranking, which is not as insane as it sounds, the Dark Elves came very close to the bottom, ayo, and a lot of people seemed really annoyed by that. But my rebuttal, why should they be any higher? They suck and have basically 0 mechanics to make them not suck. The crazy thing is, they used to have a mechanic that may not have been all that complicated, but it at least allowed them to be powerful. Their worker system was basically a rudimentary Chaos Dwarf system, and has since been gutted in exchange for something that has more interactivity, but has less potential power. There's not any delicate way to say this, so I'll just tank the demonetization risk, but the Dark Elves should be the massive slaves that they claim to be. They should be scooping them up by the thousands and putting them to work all across their empire, from the Black Ark to their economy to even their armies. They barely exist in-game, and I'm not really sure why. If you don't want the word slavery plastered all over your game, just change the name like you did with Chaos Dwarves. I don't care, just call them CA developers. I kid, but honestly call them whatever you have to allow them to be a little bit more present, because at present, they are such a nothing burger, and without them, the Dark Elves really have nothing. God, the Lizardmen are such a sad race because I really love them even with how terrible they are. I love their roster of dinosaurs and monsters, their choice of lords to fit a number of playstyles in battle, and honestly, I even like their mechanics. In theory. However, in practice, they suck like really badly. The Geomantic Web is worthless, unless you have like 3 provinces at tier 5, aka takes a billion turns to do anything, and even when it does, it's just some commandment buffs, which is so outrageously dull. Give this mechanic like a crumb of direction, attach it to a quest, and give it an orbital laser, and the Lizardmen are instantly 10 times better. The Blessed Spawnings are also a cool idea and would be a neat recruitment method if they weren't jank as hell and extremely forgettable. But the saddest part about the Lizards is that they almost certainly will not get a rework. They have had so many DLCs and never once got any attention on their base mechanics. They've had a quality of life update and still they remain. I have essentially 0 hope of a rework coming for the Lizards, and it's a real shame, as without it, the basic factions like Mazdamundi and Krokgar are borderline unplayable, or at the very least, not the least bit tempting when you have literally any other choice. And in first place, of course, it had to be the Demons of Chaos. They were the secret launch race of Warhammer 3, and I remember watching that reveal and being hyped out of my mind. Having a lord be this customizable had never been done before, and I was blown away by all the possibilities of where this could go and how this could be implemented into other factions. And playing the game for the first time, it was pretty cool. Making your own demon sure does rock, but then you realise that this is literally all there is. There's no tech tree, no other real mechanics, just Daniel, his body parts, and some very mid micro mechanics stolen from the Monogod factions. I'm serious when I say that this campaign is one of the most bare bones things I have ever seen in a completed video game, and a real testament to CA's quality assurance team at the peak of their power. He's fun for like 20 turns until you realise there is nothing to do. He hasn't received any real updates since Warhammer 3 launched, and honestly, I think they're kinda hoping we all forget about him and pretend he never existed, because that certainly seems to be what they're doing. But we will not forget, for we are Daniel the Demon Prince. We carry the flame, we fight for the rework, and will carry his name. And if you want to see just how these races stack up against everyone else, then check out my ranking for every race in Warhammer 3.